So I'd say, Nini Nanawi Magin, hello, my relations. I see your spirit. I'd introduce myself. I carry 3 names. You can have 4 names in the Anishinaabe culture. There are hundreds of nations across North, Central, and South America. As a result, each one of them introduces themselves differently, but they all introduce themselves in their language. Each one of them also, okay. Each one of them also has different ways to name for different purposes. I can only speak for my people. My people originated at the Great Lakes and expanded through a migration that occurred into the Western Yucatán. And that migration, they merged together into one trading route. The symbol is 2 circles with a squiggly line between the 2. We call this Nibinangaki. It means the land bountiful, and it was 2 locations. It was the North Mississippi, and it was the Yucatán. And certainly those that came to the Yucatán in December, as well as just this last month, saw very well that that is actually my home. And I'm very much one of their chiefs. So I'd introduce you through my names, just as I did yesterday with those in Missouri. The first name I received was as a teenager when they figured me out, and it's about my character. They named me after my father. My father, J. Douglas Barker, was born at the Northern Lights up in Alaska. It was a territory then. My grandmother was terrified of her children being treated like she and her father was. Her father, who represented the chieftain rights of Red Bear, who was the chief of all Chippewa in the 1700s, the grandson of Mama Gazeta, who was the brother of Wapasha. You'd have to know something about the relationship between the Osheti-Shakawan, the Sioux, and the Anishinaabe Chippewa to understand the relationship between those 2 brothers who met each other on a battlefield. And one of them called out, "Where is my brother?" As they shared the same mother. And they refused to fight because of that. And there's a lesson there when you find your brother. Where is my brother? I found my brothers. I'll tell you that right now. And they're in this room. And my sisters. And he was taken from Belcourt, North Dakota, from the reservation that our family was a separate band waiting on for our reservation that the United States committed to us when we parted ways with 11 million acres in Minnesota in 1863. And we were promised under Article 9 that we would have our own reservation for our family and band. And to this day, that's never come. So we lived in other reservations, the reservation of Red Lake, the reservation of White Earth, the reservation of Turtle Mountain, as a traveling minority, knowing that dead center at the Pembina River, which runs northeasterly in northeastern North Dakota into Manitoba, that we were supposed to live there. And in fact, we did live there for a period of time as we traveled south. We stopped in a place called Missouri. We gathered resources that came in from the Missouri River, the Ohio River, the Cheyenne River, and many other rivers. And then we were the ones that transported them south. We transported them south and were gone a long time. There were 2 clans that were for the deer family. There was the caribou and the moose. And while one was traveling south, the other stayed firm at the Great Lakes. And then they would rotate. Unfortunately, realizing this, the British had them massacred, and the Moose clan was almost exterminated. They invited them to a feast, and then lit the building on fire and speared them all to death. Imagine if a brother invited you to Thanksgiving, only to take your life. So we want brothers that have Thanksgiving with us, that don't seek to take our life. For a long time, over 200 years, in our public spaces, you did not declare that you were from the deer family. You kept it quiet. And when they went around, you would normally say Martin. Martin clan. They were the masking clan that we were hiding within. And when I was called in 2018, and I stood up and faced the four directions and I declared my clan, my grandma was smiling, but the four elders at the water drums had a look of shock. But it's a time for restoration, time for us to stand up and speak. So I would say my first name, my father was named on Wednesday, October 1st, 1958. And our name for Wednesday that came long before a European came, which is again another Jewish connection, was Zozep Gigijad. And it means Joseph's Day. That's what we call Wednesday. Before the European ever came, we called the middle of the week Zozep Gigijad, Joseph's Day. My first name as a teenager was Zozep Anisha. He's Joseph who gives freely. The community knew the impoverished state that we were dwelling within, and they gave us some money. I remember they called me into the vice principal's office and gave me this check. All the teachers had decided it was going to be me and my twin who were going to get this money to go and spend. We were really good athletes and we had good spirits and hearts, and we came from a really struggling family, as all living on and off reservations that are tribal are struggling. It's not the same experience that you have. It's not the same opportunity. It's not the same level of respect. And it makes me very happy to see so many of those that are joining our people in ribbon shirts here and ribbon dresses. It's a sign of respect. And we went to the store to spend it. And I remember my grandmother came with me, and they brought Ken Cron. He was the athletic director for the school. He was a part of helping us. And there was a big tree, and I just wasn't that bright of a kid, or maybe I was, but this tree had these big things all over it. And I asked what they were, and they said they were for kids who didn't have things. So I used my money to buy things for the kids on the tree. I didn't even know I was on the tree. And so they found that out and they named me. I'm Joseph who gives freely. And that's my name. My second name came when I was 39, turning 40. And it was something to strive for based upon my weakness. My weakness is that I was a man of war. And I went all in. Because I felt that because somebody told me it was okay, it must be. Well, my Father in heaven said it's not. And so they named me Midegah Ogichida, with the spirit name version. And that means he's a kind warrior man. I may be a warrior, but I need to be kind. I need to strive for kindness. I remember the first time I received it and I said, I'm not that kind. And they said, well, you got something to work towards, right? So I'm working and trying very hard. But as some of you see, when you hear me talk and I hit my boiling point, I was in the Marines for 14 years. I spent 1.5 years overseas collectively. Hurrah. And I had one motto. It was react to the situation, adapt to it, and overcome it. But I always break that wall down. And I'm sort of in that mission right now, the walls of division between our peoples and your peoples, which are the same peoples. My third name came this last December, and it was through a lot of hard work, and I was raised up to fill one of the 4 principal slots of the traditional Anishinaabe grand governance. And that was a title that was carried by my family for about 1,500 years. I'd always seen it in the history books. I always thought it was cool. It's Songab. And it's a title that was last carried by Mama Gazita when he died in 1792. We fell into the midst of some real chaos. Many do not know or are not aware of the chaos that the Indians had to face, nations upon this land from 1789 all the way until 1999 in Canada and 1978 in the US. And if someone says you can't have your land, that's one thing. If someone says you can't have your children, that's another thing. If someone says your families can't live next together and you cannot gather, that's genocide. When somebody says you can't speak your language or we'll put you in jail, you can't practice your culture. And what was our culture? It was founded on 7 grandfather teachings: wisdom, respect, humility, honesty, truth, courage, and love. These are what they did not want us to profess and to proclaim for my people. And for each people, they had a different story. The first treaties the US ever signed under their constitution and I need to educate you as I move forward. In 1789 is when your constitution came into fruition. That constitution was a byproduct, the egg from the chicken of spending time with the great Haudenosaunee nation. Now, what they don't talk about is they did cross the St. Lawrence River, and they did come to Sault Ste. Marie, the center of the Great Lakes. And at that location, we reiterated the requirement of the longhouse, of the 3 branches, of the Eagle Standard. And these things were taken back, and you came under our federation. We welcomed you into our federation and our family upon our land. In that regard, we were the parent and you were the child, as we were asked as the United Nations of the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and the Adawa not to participate in their war against their sovereign, which they had convinced us was justified. Following suit, many of the 6 nations, 5 of them, also agreed to step aside and to observe. And for those reasons, the first 2 treaties under the Constitution came in 1789 at the Treaty of Fort Harmar with the United Nations. We were the first one in human history to use the term of the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and the Dawa'a, the Anishinaabe that stretched from Ohio all the way to Hudson Bay. And in that we were promised forever that we would be under the protection of the United States government and that no other sovereign in the world would ever have anything to do with us in the way of harming us. They also signed a treaty in 1789 with the Haudenosaunee. And so we were the first 2 under your constitution that says that treaties are the supreme law of the land. Why? Because our treaties allowed you to be here, not vice versa. And you must remember that as you were few then, and we were many, now we are few and you are many. And it does not remove the responsibility of you to speak and act as spirit men and women and honor those things in our relationships as family. So my third name was Ogima Sanjab, which means he is the chief, the one who is brave and strong. And my symbol is the hoof of the moose. When planted into the earth, it is firm, immovable, and mighty. As I said, my family traveled the trade routes of Nibinangaki, the land bountiful north and south. But I don't claim that anymore. I claim Miniwakan. I claim that I come from the sacred water of the mother's womb. And each one of us shares that source. I would like to see a man or a woman who does not share that same home as I had when we started out in this mortal experience. So therefore, what do we have to learn from that place? So I'm going to teach you a little bit from what my son wrote down. There is a great teaching elder all around us. So except he doesn't spell right properly, so I'll show you later. You can see he wrote this. There is a great teaching elder all around us. So accept what is given as it is for your good. We have a song. It says, it's a great day. So Spirit, come in. I greet you, great creator who gives all. I accept what comes. And you'll hear in our words, as you did earlier, the frames Yehovah, Yahweh, Yahweh. We didn't forget that much. We carried these things in our songs. And many are still trying to search if this is true. And so before I share that song, I do want to validate to you. By the way, I just need you to know, I don't plan anything, okay? I literally have the scariest space of my life is walking from the chair up to the microphone because I have no idea what's going to happen. And everybody knows, a peaceful sleeper and then a stressful walker. So we're going to go where this goes, okay? But I do need to keep track of the time. So could somebody please let me know where we're at on that regard? Okay, we're good. The way it is. We're running late. Late's gonna be. Okay. When I was a little boy, I bridged two gaps. I had a grandmother, the most amazing woman I've ever met in my entire life. And she was a descendant of the Smith family. I sometimes wonder if my fifth great grandfather, Azel Smith, when he had a vision of a rock rolling down a hill, and he saw his grandson was a part of that, Joseph Smith Jr., he certainly must have saw the end of that tale and saw all of us here today as well. And he probably saw me too, because I'm his grandson. And he'd greet me equally. I think they saw and know these times. She was also a member of the Millet family. They built a temple in Kirtland. And they were just trying to honor God. And he was the temple builder, Artemis Millet. And he actually consecrated every single thing that he had to such a degree that he had nothing left. And so his family, while they were building, had to live with Joseph Smith and Emma. And they had to be fed by them, the architect, or else they'd have nothing. On the other half of my family, I have hardship and struggle in the last 3 generations. But prior to that, for a millennia, we had a family that was trying to continually remind their brothers and sisters of the good way. Mino b'madizuin. My grandmothers and grandfathers for a millennia were fighting an uphill battle of opposition against those who had mingled tradition that had been picked up over a millennia and a half in with our traditional spiritual teachings. And it was a constant struggle to try to take the path of the heart into communities across the continent and to find that generation to generation, less and less and less of it was wanted. And so when the Europeans came and struck and hit us, in many ways we must accept that was also a judgment to shake us up. And just as Egypt was led, when Israel was led into Egypt for 400 years to be able to prepare them for what God had for them, we likewise were led into Egypt for 400 years. But we received a great gift, and that's an understanding of your heart and the ability to speak your language, which even you, many of you as immigrants, is not domestic even to you. That we've all come to a point where we can communicate. We say when the first men and women were created, the mother and father stood over them. The mother is intimately connected with our creation story. And we remind those saying otherwise, using King's versions of the Torah, to perhaps go ask the Jews, the source document. The mother is sacred, and heaven is not a boys' club. I was supposed to be funny. But we'd say, Gigi Gim, they speak. Speaking is the most sacred thing we can do. The Hebrews do not read their scriptures. They sing them. They sing them. And in November of 2023, I had the privilege to be the first Indian to ever be allowed to walk in the rabbinical hall with 5,000 of them as they brought out the oldest Torah on the planet, written on lambskin, rolled up so beautifully. It looks like something you'd see in a Nicolas Cage movie. And they rolled it out and they sang from it. No, not exactly what they sang, but it meant something to them as their bodies were rocking and flowing. And it's amazing that the Orthodox Jews of Israel have extended an invitation to you and your leaders to attend their annual conference this November in New York City with 5,000 rabbis, where they're going to invite you as well, men and women, to enter in and speak with them. How is it possible that such a divide can be bridged if it is not for the work of the Spirit and our Father in heaven? But it also must be the work of our Sacred Mother. We carry a knowledge you may not know or be aware of. And that knowledge is that the Sky Mother, but you would say Heavenly Mother, that she exists. And if she did not, where does the reflection of the Mother come from? That we call them the Gichi Ayan, the great beings, great teachers, a mother and a father. They created the Chijak, which is the Great Spirit. And the Great Spirit created the Chiba woman, or all that would become spirit beings living in animate and inanimate flesh. And that Great Spirit would then walk with us, humans, the seventh perfected form. The Anishinaabe say that because we carry scrolls that talk about 6 beings created before us. Some of these include giants. And they were not nice people. Some of them include other creatures and beings that perhaps you give different names. Cherubim, seraphim, angels and sentinels, and what is their purpose and what is their relationship to you? And what's your responsibility? Why is it so important to live as a person of the spirit and not the flesh? So that you can become a light bulb for them. You can turn on or turn off. And how many of us have frustrated the workings of the Spirit by trying to take this book and you trying to be the motivating and moving factor to change someone's life? Now, this last month, we went through the big grand ceremony of the Eagle, Condor, Quetzal, and Colibri Councils. You're probably like, I have no idea what these are. Well, they're the traditional councils that have always existed, that run who do you think runs powwows and sun dances and the traditional ceremonies of the lodges? It's not those 2-year elected knuckleheads that are just there to spend government money that keeps increasing with greater rules. No, no, no. It's the original peoples, and they never stop being connected. The people of the north are the eagle. The people of the south are the condor. The condor is a massive group of people that stretches through the Amazon called the Munduruku, through Colombia called through Bolivia, and through Chile called the Mapuche, and down into Patagonia, where there is 30% of Argentina is still 100% owned and maintained by a tribal nation that has 100 villages. And imagine how they feel that they don't have the respect to be shown on a map, as Liechtenstein and Luxembourg and Monaco get shown. Why can't they be shown? Because our destiny was for our history to disappear. That's why it was important you kept a hold of one of those drops of water of our history. You're probably wondering what I'm holding here. 200 years ago, a young boy was a family member of mine. At the same time, a family member of mine, in the very decade that the other half of my family, the great chiefs who had walked away from the Sweet Corn Treaty in 1824, and were dealing with the first Pembina Treaty in 1850, and the fraud and the abuse and neglect through the 1860s and 70s, another group of people at the same time that Andrew Jackson said, we're done with them. We're not going to fulfill our commitments. We're not going to fulfill our requirements. The heck with what God says. We're going to do what man wants. Take. A little boy found this. This was our record. Our records were carried on birch bark scrolls. I have many of those symbols in my book so that I can go into communities and call for their writings and validate who I am, and we can then find a drop of water to communicate. Those birch bark scrolls from time to time, when they must be stored, are placed upon metal plates. We do this on plates of brass. We do this on plate of copper that turns into brass. Just leave copper around long enough. Onto tin, we put it onto gold. These were not uncommon things. Many museums have many replicas of our, or many artifacts of our things. Do not believe that because it's on metal plates, that it's not real. It absolutely is. That's how we stored records. Paper placed into the earth will fall apart. So we found these things, and he translated them for the English reader. Why? Because it was the English who were on 5 continents, murdering, plundering, and killing everybody in the name of the peacemaker. And so a seed was dropped within your people to try to heal you and prepare you for the time when we would be ready to rise again. And that certainly happened, that you took upon yourself, your ancestors, those that you would call them the pioneers or the people of the 1800s, who said, you know what? I'm white and I have everything going for me. So let's just throw it away and be hated by everybody. And they were. They had extermination orders. They were not allowed to be anywhere. They were called liars and thieves. And yet James Adair in the 1600s, who sent the very first analysis of the tribal peoples back to Europe, said, hey, I think we found the Jews. Why else did they come down so hard on us? This record we took down to Central America to the big ceremony, and it could have gone 50-50. For about a year, as they researched it, they sent me out from last March, how we got here. They sent me out from last March to go and tell those that were carrying the record that we're analyzing it, but we're fairly certain it's true. And these are the people at the highest circles and levels that had never before looked at it. They had other drama going on. They were trying to protect nature. They were trying to protect water. They were trying to save their own families and jungles. So we did a red cover to show respect, because red is the color of our blood, our veins stretching forward and backward in time. We put a portion of the peacemaker's calendar on it. Many are not aware that the Maya is where he stayed for 819 days. And they have that history. And they have a calendar that tells them exactly in each season where he was and what the sky looked like, so they could reproduce it as they tried to teach it. I think that has a purpose in today's age. We had it in Spanish, which I can't read, but we called it the Nephite Record. And that was to be culturally sensitive to our people. Joseph Smith called it the Book of Mormon. It did not have a name. He named it after the record that he had called the Bible, where it went by book of, and as he read it or went through it, discovered, well, Mormon wrote this thing down, abridged it. So that's what it was called. However, him and Sidney Rigdon had the great sense to understand that we don't operate that way. We value the family, not the individual. And so for that reason, the very first copy of the Book of Mormon that went to the Lamanites was called the Nephite Record. And it exists. And you can Google it, and it's there. And so we're going to keep in what Joseph believed, which matched what we believed. On the very first chapter, it says that a man told his boys, you better go back and get that Torah. Not the Holy Bible. Remember, the Holy Bible is 2 separate things. It's the writings and teachings of Jesus, the peacemaker, again, who was called Yeshua. We shouldn't get caught up on names or translations. Heck, the Jews called me Dawid. And I said, it's David. And they said, it's my name. It's our name, David. So as things translate from Hebrew into Greek, into Latin, into German and English, that there is always going to be a translation, but it's always the same person. It's the same person. If you met me as David or you met me as Midegah, if you got together, you'd figure out it's the same person. It's the same person. However, when he came to us, the Anishinaabe, we asked him where his power came from. Where does it extend? Where does it come? Because he did amazing things. We had heard about him jumping off a tree down with the Haudenosaunee. He must have had a special body. And he told us, Gijis Gijig, light and sky. And so we called him the man of light, Gijis. So long before the word Jesus ever existed, the Anishinaabe were calling him Gijis. And we sometimes wonder when he turns the head, he's remembering what we called him. Because we loved him a lot. So much so that we tried to continue the path of the heart for him. This book was taken, and I just want to say it was received and accepted with love, and it was placed upon the altar of our sacred tree of the Maya, which is the central ceremonial grounds of the Americas. And when that happened, that means it's truth. That means it's doctrine. That means it's sanctioned. That means the decision has been made. And we know now that there are more records that need to come forth. And that call has been placed out, and the Maya have began bringing forth a book called the Tree of Life. The book that the Maya carried, the records, its title translated to English was their observation on what has disappeared. The Tree of Life. Hoping that together maybe we can rebuild it and bring it back with our hearts, and then it'll manifest before us. The Church of Jesus Christ, the Church of the Peacemaker, they're the ones that made that happen. And so it's you that's written upon the pages of this Nephite record when it sees the future and the people who would return that home. And so I think you should place that into your heart, that you stood ready when a moment of opportunity came. And they are few and far between. And when they come, you have to go and move with swiftness and haste, or else doors close. I went to many branches on those trees of the restoration, pleading for one thing: Nephite records. Nephite records. And the only ones who answered the call was the Church of Jesus Christ. You are now a friendship record in my heart. And maybe that should be recorded in a book or in your computer. And maybe you should follow up on your friends. Maybe a part of that friendship record, you have a baptismal record or date. But it starts with a friendship record. And we need to start focusing on that. If we focused on friendship records, we already have 50, 60, 70 million friends. Every branch connected to the tree gets to claim the tree. Look how great a tree I am. Don't be the big branch on the side that says we're the ones that did it. Maybe the roots will just stop giving you sap. And maybe that's happened to another branch. So as we go through our peoples, we're going to give these to them, and we're taking their name down. We're taking where they live. We're taking their family. You're my friend. If you need anything, you contact me. You need a bridge over water, you contact me. You need help with your family, you contact me. You need a voice of support and encouragement, you contact me. Let them read the book. Be their friend. It's the Holy Spirit that is going to touch them in their heart and remind them of who they are. Even as that seed is pressed into the deep, dark pressures of the earth, and that drop of water in that cold, dark place awakens it to start growing. To the observer, you would think, that little thing is insane. It's growing in crooked ways. Its branches are reaching in all directions. It's stretching out its roots. It's communicating where it's at. You should be there where those roots are stretching, even if they're in crooked ways, to say, I love you, you're my friend, because they're in the friendship record of your heart. And then guess what? You can guide them along, and when the Spirit compels them to seek you out and say, I need to do this right here, Moroni 4 and 5. I need to do this right here in Nephi, where the peacemaker led him to the water. And then you act, because in that moment you have been given stewardship over that sacred ordinance. And don't think I'm blind. I know full well what he said in there, which is it's something I have to clarify today. Let them come to you is the point, and they will, because you're their friend. But we also have to recognize that in there, when he called when the peacemaker called the multitude together, and he fed them, and he took them into the waters of immersion, into the sacred room of Mother Earth, and stood them up, that certainly they saw the earth as an extension of him as well. And they understood that the earth was the very vessels that would embrace their spirit children yet to be born. That every child and grandchild that will come 7 generations from now is made of water, earth, and spirit. What have you done to their water and earth that will embrace their spirit? And this is the teachings that we teach our children as an Ogichi Da. My responsibility is to execute the strength and direction of the mother, which is her unborn generations. The eagle does not fly backwards. Too many eagles are trying to fly backwards right now, and they're walking on the ground. The eagle flies forward. Men, we make it happen for the women. We must protect our water and earth. So that's my prayer I'll sing for you, is that. And then, then I'll stop talking. Aya gichidawe ushkegin. Aya gichidawe ushkegin. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah. Aya gichidawe ushkegin. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah. You're ready, Zioneers. This is a sacred song to me. Someday when we talk in person, I'll tell you about where I got this song from. But it means a lot to me, and that people understood it. I will share this. I had quite the shock a couple days ago when I was in the Joint Conference of Restoration Branches, who I keep reminding. And I said in front of them, you're not joint conferences. You're Jesus Christ, and you need to return to him. Period. It has to happen. Is that I started singing it after they gave me a blessing. And then like 75% of the congregation knew it. I thought that was pretty fascinating. So we'll sing it now. It's a sacred song, and it should direct us on the path of the mother. Holy, holy, holy is the God of Israel. Holy, holy, holy is the great I am. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Emmanuel. Holy, holy, holy is the King of Zion. One last thing. April 6th, 1830, Joseph Smith and 6 men went into New York, and they filed a religious trust. It was called the Church of Christ in the Land of Zion. A lot happened from that period of time until 1844 as they spread. We almost got some theme music for that. As we spread through Pennsylvania and Ohio, through Illinois and into Missouri, and then even those that were let off into the mountains and forgot they have to come back. They got to come back. And it got left along the wayside. 4 years ago, the legal counsel of the Iroquois Nation, he was their top lawyer for the Six Nations. He knew the truthfulness of this record right here, which, by the way, in a few short years will be the most well-known version that you'll see in the world, because it's going to be the Indians that help you take it to everyone else. Hey, it's a little easier then, eh? Hey, this is from the Indians. Here's an Indian, eh? We got a lot more too. Let's talk about the Great Law of Peace next. And they requested the status of it, and they found that it had been sitting and waiting. And those that had managed it handed it over to validate if it had any standing in the modern age and era. A conversation was communicated with the United States federal government and the Internal Revenue Service. They know if things are up or down. And not only did they confirm that we own it, but they provided the modern number connected to the old number, which is 32-something, which states that we are not a corporation. We are not a leaf on the tree of a celestial kingdom. They use the word terrestrial and celestial to mean a lower level kingdom, the kingdom you are left with by the peacemaker, and then the one we'd like to have when he comes back. Well, mankind has really done a bad job in their judgment with trying to fix things. We make pretty stone buildings, and that's about it. About it. And so this number was provided. It is a religious trust. It is perpetually tax exempt, and it is not a part of the Commerce Department of the Department of the Interior. And what we are going to do is we are going to hand that back to work hand in hand with the Church of Jesus Christ so that they know with a surety that they are, in fact, the April 6th, 1830 church, and they have the paperwork to validate it. And if someone wants to show up in court, we already won because we already have the federal government's letter. And what are the odds that a descendant of Joseph Smith and a descendant of the principal chiefs who would walk down through the Americas and be named? It just happened. I've been trying to quit a lot. People know, but it keeps happening. That now that's in my hands. And I'm bringing that as a gift to you so that we can use it as an anchor point to, one, inspire you to step away from the kingdom of men and to step back into the Church of Christ in the land of Zion, which we must build. We must build. And as your elders work with us in our biospheres of nature, which are sacred, where you can lift butterflies up, that you will see what it is you want to build here. We will show you as you help us, and then we will help you. Zion will be built, and is not Zion a great sanctuary and garden for all living things to dwell as one? Amen. And if you are not one, you are not mine, is what he said. And so we're one with you, and we're opening big doors, and we want you to walk through with us holding our hand. We know there will be things that we do that must go away. But we also know that there are things we do that are symbolic and representatory of the very things you see in this book. We know there will be more books coming, and we expect you to take them as well. But we ask you to show some respect. As we have stated, one last thing, and then David, it's your turn. I'm helping you out here, brother. Helping you out. Is that, and I need you to hear my heart on this. We believe in original records. We believe in original truth. When we receive a copy, we go to the source. The New Testament, we are asking from you as a book called The Teachings of Jesus. We're asking for you to help us obtain that. We are taking the Nephite Record. It'll be this. And the Maya will work with you on making it in their language, but it must be in a red cover so that when they see it, they know it's family. And it must have his logo on it so that we know that it's the peacemaker, our peacemaker that you're talking about in here. We have accepted the full Torah from Israel, the sages and the source of the Old Testament. And we are accepting that into our communities. And so as you interact with us, many of you that really affirm and love the Holy Bible, remember that you love that it leads to the peacemaker. However, the Old Testament is the New Testament, and it was created over 1,300 years by European kings that banished many of your ancestors to this continent as unworthy. And we welcomed you in with open arms. Maybe those governments came over from Europe and harmed us and you, and we find ourselves together. So if we tell you we will take the Nephite Record, which is also the teachings of Jesus, and we will take the teachings of Jesus, and we will take the Torah from Israel, which they have provided to us. Please do not be offended if we ask you not to bring the Bible. For us, it is a symbol, and we have lost nothing in what we have taken. There is nothing less that we maintain in what we have asked for. But what we do remove are scars. Scars that were placed upon the hearts of women and children that are living just by the mere image of seeing King James. It was European kings that nearly destroyed us. And the mere fact it says King James causes some to have an inability to speak, an inability to move. It's called PTSD. But the second Mima, somebody scarred as well, held this with the Torah, no problem. And the most sacred book she could have ever received. And so what did we lose? Nothing. What did we gain? A stumbling block to be able to talk about the peacemaker with the Jew has been removed. I will remind you of something you were not aware, that we worked from 2021 to 2023 with them on ourselves, by ourselves, and found that we are them and they are us. And because we accepted the Torah, we were then able to talk about our peacemaker. And as we talked about our peacemaker, they declared that sounds a lot like our Yeshua. And then we could talk about Yeshua. I said, how come you don't talk to the other people about him? Because they offend us. Why do they offend you? Well, it's not Yeshua that offends us. That's from the horse's mouth of the highest rabbis that exist. What offends you then? They made their own copy of the Torah. The Creator gave to them, to their tribe, a history they recorded, a relationship of family. What right does another family have to take your history and change it? Just as this is a history of my family, if you take this history and change it, you will perpetually be offensive to me. Offensive to me. Once we removed that stumbling block and took their Torah, we talked for half a day about Yeshua and had no problems because they will agree that he said he was taught by his father. Well, his father certainly must be the God then. Just as my son thinks he's a cool kid until his friends meet his dad. So I want to say that so you don't get offended. You prepare yourself. And you also understand that you, as the Church of Jesus Christ, have been invited as the Church of Jesus Christ to the annual Rabbinical Council of 5,000 rabbis in New York City to sit and converse with the Jewish Learning Institute, the National Committee for the Furtherance of Jewish Education, the yeshiva representatives, and the rabbinical or Orthodox orders and councils of Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Asia. And they will more than welcome sit down and talk with you about signing a proclamation where they will declare, let's hold hands and wait hand to hand. She already saw it. The Anishinaabe signed it first. And we will wait for the 8th era, the Messianic age. They are also waiting for Mashiach, and they're a little stunned that it might turn out to have actually been their guy in the first place. Remove the roadblock. Return to the Torah. Return to the Torah. Remove yourself from what the kings have pressed upon your generations. And you will find, as equally as we have found, more truth and knowledge that raises up the mother. In both of our teachings in the original oral and written Torah together, the version you will receive, the first time that they have ever shared it outside of their synagogue for general use, they are giving to you. What does it declare what the Jews have known for thousands of years? And it matches what we say, that when men and women were formed, they were formed together as a single being. Connected back to back, separated and faced each other. So that the man would not believe that she was made from him. You only received a portion of the story. Imagine how offended the Jews are. So that man would not believe that she was lesser than him. He caused a deep sleep to fall over them as she was separated and stood before him. In that moment, he made a mistake and said, surely this woman is flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone, and is from me. And then he was corrected. That's the part you miss. And said, no, just as you are, just as she is the flesh of your flesh and the bone of your bone, so too are you, flesh of her flesh and bone of her bone. And all of your generations will come from her and be from her flesh and from her bone. Man, you have been given strength and endurance to provide for and protect the strength and endurance of the mother. And what is her strength and endurance? It's in her generations unborn, enduring and living. Men, it's time for us to ensure that takes place. So I leave that with you in the name of my dear friend, the great peacemaker, my Lord and Savior, who I call by many names, but in this house, so in the voice of unity, I will say Jesus Christ. Amen.